Right, you lot, and oh my god, what a disaster. How did that happen? Right, you lot, and the previous weekend was Glastonbury. We saw Charlie XCX and Olivia Rodrigo and 1975 headline, who were all fantastic, by the way, should I point out. But, of course, they're only a side narrative in what was the weekend's big story, which was, of course, controversy, which, of course, I'm going to be talking about. And it's a shame that I'm talking about this, and I'll get onto that later, but now, the event already had controversy going into it due to one of the acts performing, known as Kneecap, of course. And Kneecap, how do I say, are quite radical in the things that they believe in. To the point they recently said that you should kill your local Tory MP, a blatant example of fighting violence, along with their support groups like Hezbollah and Hamas, with a great book in there. But the BBC took this moral step and said, well, they're going to perform, but we're not going to show the performance. We're not going to broadcast it. So fair enough. And I think it is a difficult one. It's more difficult than you think, because I think freedom of expression and, music, protest is one of the most powerful forms of, bringing people together politically. The classic punk music of the 70s or the early 2000s grunge music, that kind of protest, that anti-establishment message, which is of course important, but the problem is an act like Kneecap, besides the music, are saying things which incite violence, which again proves this notion that there is of course limits to what you can say in this world, and limits to freedom of speech, of course. Because there is just a barrier when you get to hatred and inciting violence, which is where the cut-off point should be. It makes me laugh, the usual people who scream about free speech are really upset and up in arms about this and calling for this act to be in jail. But anyway, Kneecap weren't even the main story. I don't even know what their set was because no one saw it, but somehow there was another act. Bob Villain, not Bob Dylan. I don't know if it's like a play on words or something, I don't know much about these guys, who broadcasted nationally in the United Kingdom, shouted death to the IDF in a chant that not only they were singing, but they got the whole crowd singing. How this broadcasted, how this happened, how no one cut the feed, I mean, several people have to be sacked after this calamity. Like, how do you not call the plug? You can't argue that, they're in on it, they don't care, and you see all the usual conspiracy theories like, BBC are funding a mass and all that stuff, but like, well, they banned Kneecap, they clearly didn't want this. I don't know how it happened, but yeah. Now, of course, this is appalling, outrageous things to say, because you can't call for the death of a group. You can't do it. You can't say that without consequence, I'm sorry. Because, of course, there's 100 ways that you could have said or made a statement which was fine. Based on what's happening in Gaza, I think a lot of people have views. Even people like myself who are quite critical of the IDF and what's going on, you can't do that. Now, some people have tried to use the framing device that they were not talking about the people in the IDF, they were talking about the organisation. It's not people, it's an organisation. But the organisation, the problem is made up of mostly Jewish people who, not all of them, let's be honest, are there just because they're genocidal people who want to commit war crimes. A lot of them didn't really have a choice, it was that or jail, and I know you could have objected and took your morals and gone to jail, but let's be honest, we could all be keyboard warriors and say, no, I'd never serve, I'd go to, like, you'd serve end of the day. I'm sorry, like, and maybe some of you wouldn't, but I'm sure a majority of people would end up doing it. So the sad reality of something like this is that it's that classic notion of any publicity is good publicity. It always made me laugh. I always found it funny whenever people would moan about the latest stunt you saw a group like Just Stop Oil do, whenever they were like vandalising paintings or throwing paint at Stonehenge. But then you never saw them broadcasted when they were doing the more peaceful stuff and the harmless stuff that actually would have made the calls quite valuable and they actually had something to say. But unfortunately, the only way you get into the public eye is by saying or doing outlandish things. But to be honest, Bob Villain's probably over the moon, because this act has brought, awareness to what's going on in Gaza in a weird backhanded way, and people are probably more focused on it now. Not that a lot of other people haven't already pointed out issues, but I just think, even if you're giving this that benefit of the doubt, and it's very hard to, I think, there's no hiding behind what their true feelings are with this, but I think it was the wrong thing you could have said anything else, you could have chanted, you could have done something quite powerful that a lot of people would have got behind. But I do think there's another element to this, and I have seen people point this out, and it is quite interesting, that what if Bob Dylan chanted death to the Russian armed forces, or death to the Iranian military? I don't think we would have seen the same response. That's the truth. I think that they would have been wrong also, because similarly, Russian armed forces, Iranian defence have built up again. Innocent people don't have a say, and you can't call for... But you wouldn't have seen this backlash. And I do think there is an element of protection with Israel that you don't see with other countries. And I know they're all very complicated, convoluted situations I'm not going to break down into, but I did find that as an interesting piece. Not, of course, that I don't think what Bob Dylan did was absolutely vile and atrocious, and how it was ever broadcasted, I'll never know, but it's kind of sad that instead of actually talking about the real issues in Gaza, the media's filled with this story, which is it's a story of quite nothingness, really. But I bet you'll see Bob Dylan kneecap and get huge success and make a lot of money off this in a backhanded way. In the same way Lucy Connolly is like kind of a celebrity now, even though she was a woman who was arrested for saying vile things on social media. Now, I've actually seen people compare Lucy Connolly to these people. Now, first of all, like, they talk about like 2 tiers and stuff. There probably is one, but Bob Dylan, a celebrity, Lucy Connolly was a common woman, so that's already an issue. But the difference is that Bob Dylan are calling for the death of people in a foreign country, in a war in the Middle East, who are part of a war that are committing war crime. Whereas Lucy Connolly was saying you should burn people that could live like a mile from you, or like down the road. Like, there's obviously like a reason there. Let's be honest. Like, that the two are not the same. Should we arrest everyone in the crowd who chanted it? Should they all be executed or something? No. Probably just ban them. You know, like when the football chants, they do like this really stupid ones, and you get banned. Just do that. Just blacklist them. You can't come next year. Sorry, you can't see Harry Styles. I think he's headlining next year. I saw somewhere. We don't need to put these guys in jail. So overall, it's a real shame that we're talking about a music act saying something outrageous and not talking about the actual issues. First and foremost, it was a calamity of failures on the BBC. How this happened, like, no one in the room could have predicted it. And I'm sorry, right? Everyone knew what Bob Dylan were about. Like, if you looked at their Instagram, and perhaps they didn't know they were going to chant this. But I do think it is dangerous, though, if you start, and this is why I'm kind of mixed feelings on these things. I think the problem is, like, with a conflict, like what's going on in Gaza, everyone feels like it has to be like a football team thing. Like, you have to be on a side. You have to. There's no room for nuance in something like this. And the problem is, it's such a like multi-generation conflict, which has so many ties and so many avenues and sides to it all, that it's okay to like have two things can be the same. You know what I mean? To play kind of the both sides are bad, or both sides have good and bad villains and heroes on both sides. It ain't Star Wars. Life don't work like that, you know what I mean? And that's why I'm trying to be nuanced in all of this stuff. But I do think that there's a place for an acts like these to express these opinions and to have this artistry of protest, and that be whether I agreed with what they're saying or whether I didn't agree. But I think there is consequences for your actions. There are limits between free speech and hate speech. So I always compare it like, if you have beef with your mate, right, and you slag off his mum and then he slaps you, like, you kind of walked into it, you kind of deserved it. Like, you were free to say that, but there was a consequence, and I think that is the case. Freedom of expression, but not without consequence when you cross the line, and that is what Bob Dylan did. So yeah, So this was a quick one kind of thrown together. It's like the hottest day of the year today when I'm recording this. I just had to talk about it now where it's relevant and new. I've got my album coming out soon and a big ranking video coming out over the summer. So yeah, got some interesting content. I'll see you lot soon. Bye.